Good evening, welcome to Twin Talk. My name is Johnathan Colby Riedel, and tonight I'm joined by a very special guest, former Congressman Dennis Ross. Nice to meet you, Mr. Ross,
Thank you, Jonathan.
by the way. So first off, before we start talking a lot about politics, I just want to get into a little bit of a feel of who you are. So can you just kind of tell us where your background lies before politics?
Sure. Before I got into elected office, I was a practicing lawyer here in Lakeland. But prior to that, I had always had a passion for the political arena. So my wife and I, who we met in high school, pretty much were involved in political parties, elections, things of that nature, all the way through our relationship and through our marriage. And then eventually, once I was elected to Congress, I had to divest myself of the law firm and became a full-time congressman.
Okay, so that's kind of how you got into politics then, just kind of getting involved with the party, local issues and things like that?
Yes, and I ran my wife's campaign for sophomore class president in high school and was successful, so that was really what launched it.
Okay, okay, awesome. Can you bring us a little bit into your campaign? What year did you really run for office?
I started in 2009, actually. The election was in November of 2010. We launched our campaign 10 years ago, February of 2009, and it was an open seat. We spent a lot of time not only traveling the district and getting to meet people, doing a lot of presentations, but also raising money. It is a full-time endeavor to be able to fund a campaign. We had to raise a little over $1 million in our first campaign.
Wow.
And so that takes a lot of time and quite a commitment. So we started early, almost 2 years out.
Okay, yeah, so you had a busy schedule going into the election.
Very busy schedule.
Okay, well, awesome. Now getting a little bit closer to Washington, we're going to start talking about politics, but just the city itself, what did you think about it whenever you got there? Were there any surprises that kind of caught you off guard about the city or the people that are there in particular?
Well, it's a very fascinating city. It is the political center of the universe. I mean, that's one way to look at it. Incredible history, a lot of heritage, and of course, a lot of employees, federal employees. For me, it was more of a job. I enjoyed the opportunity to get to meet a lot of people from across the world, my colleagues from around the country, dealing with federal employees who were career. You get to develop a relationship. It makes you appreciate more of the sense of our democracy, but it really makes you appreciate being back home.
Yeah, for sure. Did you happen to ever visit the White House? Anything cool like that?
I had many visits to the White House. My last visit, I think, well, the last visit was the Christmas ball there this last December. But I've been to Rose Garden receptions. I've flown on Air Force One with the president. I mean, there's been some fascinating things that I've been able to do as a member of Congress, which I really enjoyed. It's a blessing beyond belief. Absolutely a blessing. But I also felt that my time should be short. 8 years was enough for me, and then to move on.
Okay, so question, speaking about time being short, the amount of time that you spend in political office, are you in favor of term limits by any measure or design?
My only concern about term limits is that if they're going to have them, well, we have them for the president, they have to be a reasonable amount so that you don't have people just running for office to become a title holder.
Yeah.
Like we do in the state legislature in Florida. There you have 8-year term limits. If you're going to have term limits, have it 12 or 14 years. Okay. That gives you plenty of time to be able to become effective by learning and having a lot of experience. But I will tell you, 2/3 of the Congress today weren't there 10 years ago. So term limits have a sense of making themselves happen regardless of having it mandated.
Yeah, so you're saying that the voters, they might say, it's time for something new.
The voters, and it takes a toll on your lifestyle. I mean, you're traveling every week up there. You're in meetings every day. It wears on you. So, I think the average time is about 6 years for a member of Congress.
Okay, wow. Well, I guess you outlasted that then, huh?
Yeah, good enough for me.
Yeah, that sounds good. So what did you learn in Washington?
Well, I learned that what President Truman said was true, that if you want a friend in D.C., go get a dog. It's a dynamic arena of conflict resolution with more focus on conflict than there is on resolution. Mm-hmm. But it was an exciting time to be able to do things. I mean, you get a chance to actually affect someone's livelihood, good or bad, and you have to take these things very seriously. dealing with constituents back home, the widow who can't get her Social Security disability benefits, the veteran who can't get his medical appointments, Medicare patients, things of that nature, the things you don't read about in the paper, those were exciting for me because it meant that you were doing your job as a conduit between the federal government and the people back home.
Okay, yeah. Just speaking legislatively, is there anything that you ever are necessarily more proud of than the rest? Something that you kind of push for to be passed, or were part of?
I was part of a lot of legislation. One of the things that I enjoyed doing, my good friend Democrat Gwen Graham and I co-sponsored a resolution to require high school students to take the civics exam for citizenship into the United States. Okay. It wouldn't cost anything, it wouldn't affect their grades, but it would show how much they either do or don't know about U.S. history and about civic engagement. And unfortunately, it didn't go anywhere outside of the House, but that was a nice little passionate endeavor for me.
Yeah, that's awesome. Speaking, you're just talking a little bit about friends on the other side, Democrats. What do you think kind of brings you guys together? The political atmosphere is a lot of times divided, and I was just curious, what do you think?
Johnathan, it is divided by choice. But if we were to really focus that choice on commonalities, we would realize how much we have in common. And I think that's what the American people expect us to do. At the American Center for Political Leadership, those are the survey results that we found. It's over 78% of the people that have been surveyed expect us to find common interest and get things done. And it will happen, but you've got to reach across the aisle. You've got to get out of your comfort zone. You can't be all party. No one party has a monopoly on good ideas. Mm-hmm. And some of the best legislation ever passed out of this Congress has been bipartisan legislation. Yeah,
okay, awesome. Well, just one last question for you here before I'm going to bring my brother in for word on the street and ask people who they prefer better, celebrities or politicians. I wonder what side they're going to choose here. What did you learn most about yourself in Washington? The city's nice and all that, but what did you learn inside?
The one thing I learned more than anything is that if you want to be successful, and engaging what that success is always difficult, but you first of all have to be anchored to faith and you have to be anchored to family. You cannot let the press clippings and the comments that other people are telling you that feed your ego to run your life. You've got to be anchored to something outside of the political arena. You've got to remember that politics is what you do, it's not who you are.
Mm-hmm. Wow, that's a great quote. Well, thank you so much. We're going to kick it over to Blake for word on the street.
Today we're going to be asking Southeastern University students how much they know about politics and the people representing them. My name is Blake Riedel, and this is Word on the Street. So we're here on El Prado, seeing which people know better, their politicians or their celebrities. What's your name?
Sarah Britt.
I'm Josue.
Zach Jones.
Okay, Ruben Imlaw.
Mary Flores.
So my name is Maria Andrea Lopez.
We wanted to see, do people know their celebrities better? Do they know their politicians better? Or is it kind of a mix between both? So I'm going to start off with the celebrities. Does that go with you?
Yeah, of course. Let's do it.
Do you know who this is?
Okay, Beyonce.
She is Beyonce.
Do you know who this is?
Beyonce.
It's Beyonce.
Queen Bee, right?
Yeah, I guess so.
Do you know who this guy is?
Yes, Drake.
I believe that's Drake.
He is. It's Drake.
You went 3 for 3 on the celebrities, right?
Yeah.
Now we're going to politics. It's a little harder. I'm assuming you know who this guy is, right?
Yes, that's our current president, Donald Trump.
That's Trump.
Donald Trump.
Donald Trump.
You know him from Twitter, right?
Also that, yeah.
Do you know who this guy is?
That's our vice president, Mike Pence.
Michael Pompeo.
Does he look familiar at all, or?
I don't think so, no.
Is there anything that you learned or maybe that you kind of realized today?
I'm definitely not as into politics as I thought I was.
That's all we have for this edition of Word on the Street. Stay tuned for our next episode. Until then, I'm Blake Riedel.
All right, Blake, so you hit the streets, kind of got the overall feeling of what kids knew.
Yeah.
So what do you think about your experiment?
Yeah, so I hit the street. As you guys saw, I talked to students about whether they thought celebrities or politicians were more notable and more knowledgeable.
And to me, I found that celebrities were kind of a lot more recognizable in the picture. So if you see the picture, they go, oh, that's Beyonce, that's somebody who's Drake. Notable. Yeah, there's Drake, things like that. But for politicians, if you see the picture, you don't actually know exactly who that person is. By politicians, you know them by their name. So they're kind of like, I brought up Nancy Pelosi. Who is she? The Speaker of the House, right? And they knew who she was. They knew in essence her position, what she held, but she wasn't very noticeable, not at least through a picture.
Yeah, not very recognizable. What did you think about Donald Trump whenever they saw him? Were they more, was he more recognizable?
I think that was a little bit easier because of his days on The Apprentice and then ultimately The Celebrity Apprentice. And as we all know, he's been a very controversial figure, whether you like him or hate him. So everybody knew President Trump for the most part. And then for the vice president, it kind of dropped off. I was kind of confused by that because, you got the president and then the second in line is Vice President Mike Pence, and not very many people knew of him, didn't know his position, and I actually had one guy say he looked like the guy from House of Cards.
No,
so interesting.
Frank Underwood.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Well, that is interesting, especially because he's only one heartbeat away from the presidency, as they say.
Yeah.
And it's amazing that a lot of people wouldn't even know who their commander in chief is.
Yeah. So I think there's definitely something there that we have to learn. We have to be able to know people by their policy, know people by what they stand for. That's really important, especially in our society today.
Yeah, for sure. So, Congressman Ross, just to kick it back to you, we've talked a lot about your experience in Washington, what you have done, but what are you really looking forward to in the future? Whether it's practicing law again or...
Well, being part of a law firm is something I'm continuing to do, but my main passion is to work with this next generation, your generation, of getting involved in the political process. Civic engagement is so important in a self-democracy. We the people govern our country, and we've got to be able to teach that. And we've got to be able to have civil discourse in the engagement of citizenship. And I think that's something that works. History has shown that it will work. It's just that we have to re-emphasize it, and that'll be the passion that I pursue hereafter.
Okay, so do you have any specific actions in order to get that done, whether it's interactive videos or teaching a class?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I'm teaching a class here at Southeastern. We're taking the students to D.C. in March. We're going to be meeting with several the acting chief of staff of the president, Secretary Ben Carson. We want these students to get firsthand experience and then let it replicate itself over time. How important and significant it is to be involved in the political process.
Yeah, for sure. Where can I sign up? Right?
We'd love to have you.
Okay, yeah, for sure. So, Blake, just asking you one last question. We talked about our experiment, what you did. What's your overall take with politics in the future? We talked some about how they recognize people, but do you think, for example, people will want to be the next Congressman Ross?
Yeah, I hope so. I think that we need a lot of people who are willing to sacrifice. I think we look, and a lot of times in politics, we see people who are there for political gain, really. They want to gain a position, or they want to gain, kind of a spotlight. And I don't think that's the way to go about it in politics. I think we should have humble people ready to serve. And, just for example, we were talking before the show about Paul Ryan, how he used to sleep in one of his cots in D.C.
Yeah.
And, I think that's kind of an admirable path to go because, you talk about that. And you notice this guy, he's not living high, he's not living above his means. And he's doing...
He's a good guy.
Yeah, and he's doing his service for America. And ultimately, he's now retired. But I think we need more people like that in office.
For sure, yeah. Maybe Congressman Ross can actually call him. They can go golfing or something sometime, right?
Well, he likes to turkey hunt, and he's decided that he wants to come down here to Florida to turkey hunt sometime, so we'll try to get him down.
Hey, well, if you guys go, let me know again.
You got it.
I'll be the first one there. But yeah, well, you know what? Thank you so much for coming on in and letting us interview you. It's been an honor and a pleasure. And and also thank you, Blake, for being here and interviewing Word on the Street. So with that, I just would like to say thank you guys for watching Twin Talk. It's been a great show, and we're very excited for what we're doing here. Until then, have a good night, and God bless.